Hello and welcome to another video. Today we'll continue exploring Autodesk Takeoff. We'll go through the 3 basic steps to quantify. Let's get started. Step 1. Define the classification and measurement system you want to use for your takeoff. Step 2. Upload 2D and 3D files. And finally, Step 3. Create takeoff packages. In the first step, we need to define a classification and measurement system. In this case, we'll use the sample one with the metric unit system. When we do this, we see as the first step mark checked. Now let's do step 2, upload 2D and 3D files. For that, we'll go to the Files tab inside of Takeoff. Remember that this Files tab is shared all throughout the Autodesk Construction Cloud, because it's Autodesk Docs that it's the basis of all the other modules that sit on top of it. What we're going to do is simply select the specific folder we want to upload our files in, drag and drop the files, and then wait for a little bit until they are finally uploaded. Once our files have been uploaded, we can select a specific 2D sheet in this case and publish it to Autodesk Takeoff. We need to select certain information and type how we want to name this set. Remember that markups won't live in the published sheets. They'll just stay in Autodesk Docs. Now, when we are extracting the sheets, some information can be captured automatically using OCR technology, like the sheet number and title. They are usually in the lower right corner of your file. In this sample file I'm using, there is no information, so nothing is coming up automatically. I'm simply going to type a number and use the file. Once the extraction process has finished, you can edit the sheet number if you need, or simply go to the next step where you will also revise or edit the title of the sheet and add tags. In this case, we don't have any, so we'll leave it as is and continue to publish the sheet. Once we've published our sheet, we can go to the Sheets and Models tab. Here we'll see our new 2D sheet with the title, version 1, the name of the set, and the date that we provided the system with. If we go back to our Home tab, we'll also see the second step, which is uploading 2D or 3D files, as checked. Finally, let's start with step 3. Let's create a package. For that, you'll go to the Package tab and click Create Package. Let's use Arc and Structural for this example. Once you finish that, you just click on the name of the package and then you'll open the 2D sheet that you already uploaded. Once we are in our sheet, inside the package that we selected, in this case architectural, we can go to the left tab and select the takeoff types. As you see, it's empty right now. We don't have any takeoff types, so we can start creating them. For example, let's do one for walls. Because walls is a linear element, we'll select the linear takeoff, and then from our classification system, we'll select, for example, A. And we can start our takeoff. We just have to click, selecting the different edges, and double-click to end that selection. It's important to mention that at this time the scale is not yet set, and we'll do that later on because it's really important, otherwise the measurements that we're doing have no purpose. Once we have this linear takeoff, we can proceed and create another test. For example, walls 2, we'll add it in the same description item. You can type a specific description as well if you require so. But here I realize that there are other types of quantifications. So if we are selecting linear, we should select meters, not count in this case. Let's do the quantification of another wall. and double-click to end this measurement. Because we want this linear takeoff in meters, we can always go back to the previous one and edit the mistake that we made. You just click Save, and the changes will be applied. Great, now we have two wall measurements. Let's duplicate one of our previous measurements. That way it will take all the information, avoid these mistakes. We already have that we want a linear type of takeoff in the same description category and as meters. Again, let's select a wall and double-click to end our selection. And there you go. We have our first very quick takeoff from our 2D sheet. Now let's test another takeoff type. Instead of a linear takeoff, we're going to do a quantity takeoff. That means we want a count as the end result. We'll select another description, in this case B, and count as the output of this takeoff. Because we are counting doors, you can zoom in or zoom out from your sheet as you wish and simply click to select the different doors in the drawing. You could create different classification categories for different types of doors. In this case, I am simply selecting all the green doors in our 2D sheet. While we continue selecting our doors, let me give you a few key points of why this technology can be very beneficial to your company. So nowadays, all the bids are very quick. There's a high competition, high risk, and high pressure environment to win more work. With these methods, you can improve the quality of your takeoff when you are bidding for a project. You can also aggregate quantities from 2D sheets and 3D models, like we'll see in the rest of the video. You can reduce the risk of your project. You can collaborate with others and increase the efficiency and decrease the time to perform an actual takeoff. Once we finish selecting our doors, we'll have a result as a count in the doors category. Let's create a chair category now with the count as well. It's important to mention that at any point in time, you can go back to a specific quantity takeoff you've already performed and add more items to it. So in case there was a mistake or you want to make certain changes, that is also possible in the system. And it's all intelligent. All the data of each of the items that you're counting, it's marked, and we'll also look at that later on when we are browsing through the inventory, how everything is connected in the background. Last but not least, let's create another takeoff type for an area of a miscellaneous room and select some areas from our 2D sheet that we think belong to this category, and of course we're going to change the output to square meters because it's an area element. I'm roughly selecting the areas in our 2D sheet, but it's up to you how delicate or how specific you want to do the quantity takeoff. Remember, as we mentioned before, sometimes we're doing this process in a rush, so maybe all we need to do our approximate quantity takeoff is a general idea of that area. Previously, estimators used to have 2D printed sheets, and they would use highlighters to color with different colors, exactly how we are doing it here, manually in a sheet of paper, which was fine at the time, but it's prone to errors. There is very little collaboration in it, especially now that we are working from remote locations. Sometimes one estimator could be in another physical office and they need to integrate quantities, for example. So this is another case in which a tool like this is very, very useful. We also know that as time went by, some of the estimators started to mix a digital with a paper method of estimating. But again, when you have different information living in, let's say, an Excel sheet and another part is in physical paper, then it's hard to aggregate this data. Maybe it's time consuming, it's prone to mistakes. But when you have everything in one single platform where not only the files are shared with the other stakeholders in that specific project, you can share the exact method you use to do a quantity takeoff. Maybe another estimator can do a quick error review in your estimation using the same exact sheet. I don't know, these are just some creative ways we can also use this tool. You can also import takeoff types and change the settings as needed. Now let's do one of the most important steps in the quantity takeoff. Let's calibrate this drawing. To do this, simply click where it says Scale Not Set, select a specific linear measurement in your drawing and specify the exact measurement. In this case, we know that this piece is 1 meter, so then the system will modify the entire measurement and quantity takeoff accordingly. You could also do this at the beginning of your quantity takeoff to avoid mistakes, otherwise you can do it in the process as we did it now. You can also zoom in and out of your drawing to make sure that you're not forgetting any of the items you need to quantify, and of course go back and turning on or off the different filters for each of the quantity takeoff types. You can also hover over the top left part of the package where it says architectural and select a different package you need to work with. Once you're satisfied with your quantity takeoff, you can go to the inventory, and this is where all the quantity takeoff types will be aggregated under the different classification components that we selected while doing the quantity takeoff. As I mentioned before, this is dynamic. That means when you go inside one of these categories and click a specific item, it's all linked. You can export this inventory to an Excel sheet for further collaboration. Maybe you need to add some cost codes, some extra information needed for that specific bid. This is an example of how the Excel sheet looks like. All the information is there from the category types that we created, the names of those quantity takeoff types, the quantities, and the type of measurement. If it's linear in meters, like how we selected it, or count in the case of chairs and doors, or area in square meters. Because the quantity takeoff is dynamic, you can select a specific item like a wall, and it will show you where that wall is sitting inside your 2D sheets. And the same applies to all the other categories. You can also close this section of the inventory if you need a larger view. You can see the object name as well if that's relevant to you, especially when you are managing big models as well. We'll go through it later. And finally, you can group your inventory items by the different classifications, primary and secondary, the document, or the takeoff type. What about takeoff using 3D models, where the process starts in the same way? When we go to Sheets and Model, we should have our model there already. So then we can go to the Packages tab, select the package we're going to work with, in this case architectural. It's the same package we worked with last time with the 2D sheet, but this time we need to add some quantities from a 3D model as well. We have a Revit model, we can go to the takeoff types, and as you can see, the previous takeoff types that we used in the 2D sheet are gray out. This is because they're not applicable for the 3D model. The takeoff process for 3D models is quite simple because you see each element in the MIM model has all these specific properties and information that belongs to that specific item. So we can group select different types of items and do the quantity takeoff much faster. Let's start by doing an example with this window. You can right-click an item and select all of the items in that category, then just name the takeoff type, for example, Windows type 01. Select our category, our type of count, and the beam icon. The takeoff is immediately showing us the quantity. It's important to select that check mark there to confirm that quantity takeoff. And then we can simply duplicate that takeoff type, rename it, and select a different set of items. Maybe other similar windows we also need to quantify. Then we can simply repeat this process as many times as needed. For example, let's select yet another window type, duplicate this takeoff type, rename it. But in this case, what about changing the color? Maybe you want to use different colors for the different items to have that visual representation that's immediate for everyone. Let's create another takeoff type for the frosted windows by duplicating one of the previous takeoff types of windows and just adding the word frosted in the name. Again, we can change the color to maybe this orange and perform the takeoff. You see how fast this process is? Imagine the time-consuming tasks you can save and then how you can have all that information aggregated in one inventory, both the 2D and 3D quantity takeoff. Last but not least, let's create one more takeoff type for the glazed windows. Now that we've finished our quantity takeoff from our 3D model, we can go back to the inventory where we'll find the aggregate quantities from the 2D sheet and the 3D model in the same area. As you can see here, we now have the AB description category under which we'll have all these takeoff items that we created for windows from the 3D model. Again, this is all dynamic, just as what we saw with the 2D sheet, and we can always export these to an Excel sheet. This is how our inventory Excel sheet will look like with the aggregated quantities from the 2D sheet and the 3D model. We can have the different descriptions as we did last time, but we have the new items under the AB description with the specific measurement type of those quantity takeoff types. All we can say now is happy estimating. Let's go back one more time to our 3D model just to explore some of the functionality we reviewed from the 2D sheet. So we mentioned that the inventory items are dynamic. So let's select, as we did, a specific item, and you can see how it lights up in our 3D model. Also, you can turn on and off the filters for the different takeoff types for the visual representation and color coding in your 3D model. Last but not least, you can always go back and edit the colors or information of that specific takeoff type, similar to what we saw with the 2D takeoff sheet. And you have other options besides the duplication. Maybe you want to do some more detailed quantity takeoff or use formulas, complex formulas for it. There's also that option available within the system. Finally, you can go back to your home page and see how our 3 simple steps to quantify with Autodesk Takeoff have been completed. If you scroll down, you'll see the recent sheets and models and packages that you can also access. Thanks for watching. I hope this information was useful to you. Happy quantifying, and we'll see you in the next video.